I think we often forget about the small town. But these places have incredible people and stories and histories as well. I wanted to document these places, help them tell their stories. To do this, I traveled to a nearby town of 1,000 people in central Alaska known as Salcha. Enjoy these interviews, these memories, these stories from Salcha.
Well, my name's Amy Viltrakis, and I am a retired teacher from Salcha Elementary School. And currently, I'm a volunteer coordinator for the Salcha Historical Society and Museum. And then I also volunteer for other organizations throughout the community. And so just enjoy being retired. I have lived in Salcha for 37 years, but I first came to Salcha in the summer of 1979. I was a camp cook at Bingo Camp and worked there, and I met my husband there. He was in the Air Force and he was a volunteer medic there at camp. And so we worked out at camp for the summer of 79, and we just fell in love with the area and Harding Lake and the people here. So then in 1982 we bought a house and moved our family out here, and we've lived here ever since. We wanted to raise our family in a small rural area and have them be able to go out and explore the woods and raise animals and be a part of a small community. Our kids grew up going swimming in the gravel pit and going to Harding Lake, and they participated in the 6-mile run at Salcha Elementary School, and they cross-country skied and did Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. So this was just a great community to raise a family. Well, I was raised in Orange, California, and that's about 15 minutes from Disneyland. It's real close to the mountains and to the beach, so I grew up hiking and going camping and going to the beach and going to the mountains and boating and fishing and all those sort of things. So then my grandfather had come to Alaska several times on different trips, and he always brought home pictures and stories about Alaska and how beautiful it was, so I really wanted to come to Alaska. So right after high school, I came to the University of Alaska Fairbanks to go to college. And so that's how I first came to Alaska. And then I worked out here at camp. I had worked as a cook, one for a campus ministry, had a camp out here. And Chuck Young liked I did all the cooking and stuff, and so he offered me, he told people about me cooking and stuff, so they offered me a job at Bingo Camp, and so that's when I first came to Salcha. So that was 1979. And then we moved out here, like I had mentioned, in 1982. So coming to Alaska was a huge thing. At first my family was like, "What, you're going to Alaska?" And my mom was like, "Oh, that's too far away," because at that time going to Alaska was like going to another country. It was just so far away, and everything was, to get here was a lot more expensive and things. So that was, I knew it was going to be difficult that way. And when I came my first semester of college, my mom was sure when I came home at Christmas time that I would want to stay move back to California. I said, "Oh no, like I love Alaska." And she's like, "Where's your luggage?" And I'm like, "I left it back in my dorm room." And she's like, "Aren't you going to come back here?" And I said, "No, I love Alaska, I'm staying." And so she was a little disappointed about that. But I think one of the hardest things for me when I moved to Alaska was I was kind of spoiled because my grandfather had so many fruit trees, and he had been an orange grower. So I grew up with like lots of fruit, fresh squeezed orange juice, and I had never had canned orange juice until I moved to Alaska. And the very first time I tasted it, it was like, "Yuck, what is this stuff? This is not orange juice. It is nasty, gross stuff." So I think that was probably one of the hardest things for me, was just getting used to like the fruit and vegetables that weren't really very available. And I didn't have a whole lot of time or problem getting used to the snow, because that was something new and it was exciting and fun, and even the darkness was just something different. My grandfather actually moved up to Alaska too when he was in his 90s, and so I always teased him that he was probably the oldest Chichaco on record, since he didn't move to Alaska till it was about 92, I think. So long distance phone calls were really expensive, so I'd only call my family in California maybe once or twice a month, and most of the time every Sunday I would write a letter to my mom and my dad and my sisters, and they would write back to me. So we didn't do the phone calls like we do now. So that was really different. And another thing that was really different was when we first moved out here, Salcha Fire and Rescue was very small. It was just a small group of people, and they actually didn't really have a fire department. So the people who were in the Salcha Rescue, they were on call all the time, 24/7. They were on call. My husband was one of the founding members of Salcha Rescue with Sharon Benerth, and we never went anywhere on holidays, or if there was special events, we knew, because we always had to make sure that the Salcha Rescue members were in the area. If someone was going to go to town, they'd call the other members to make sure there was coverage. So it's really different today, and we're really blessed with the fire and the Salcha Rescue Fire and Rescue now, because they have more members, and we have a fire department, and they have new stations, and so it's really different that way too. Well, I think the people here are very independent and self-reliant, but at the same time, they're also really kind and caring and thoughtful. And I know, for example, in 2008, our house flooded, and we had so many people that helped us out. We had friends that came and helped clear out the house and pulled up the carpet and all the flooring, and friends gave us a motorhome to live in. Other people gave us places to live throughout the summer and early part of the fall. We had people who brought us food because we didn't have a kitchen that we could cook in. So that's one thing about this community. You know, if you're have an illness or an emergency of some sort, there's always someone who's willing to help you out. So I think in that way, this community is outstanding, in that when we didn't have family that lived in Alaska, and a lot of people don't, you have family friends that become aunts and uncles, and it's just like a family member for your kids, and your kids grow up knowing that there are people who support them and love them that aren't just relatives. And I think that's really special too, and I think that's maybe a little bit different about Alaska than there is maybe some of the other communities in the lower 48, because so many families are far away from their their relatives, so that they create families from friends and neighbors. I grew up in the church, so the church has always been an important part of my life. We raised our kids at Salcha Baptist. They participated in all sorts of activities and camp, and we volunteered in the church. Our relationship with Christ is really important for our family, and for me too. So my undergraduate degree is in anthropology. So I've always loved history. Even as a kindergartner and first grader, history was my favorite subject, along with science. And so I've always had that love. I was always interested in the Salcha history, just because it seemed like it was a unique place, but I didn't know a lot about it. But right around 1996, I was working with Annie and Ed Keatbarnes at Salcha Elementary School, and we had a 3rd and 4th grade class. And part of the curriculum said to learn about Fairbanks history. And we said, why are we learning Fairbanks? Why are we trying to teach the kids Fairbanks history? We should teach them Salcha history because we live in Salcha and they should know the history of the community. So we set out to start working with the kids, and we soon realized that the history of the community is very scattered. There's not like a book that you can pick up about Salcha history like you can Fairbanks history or Anchorage history or someplace like that. So we started working with the kids, and that's when I really kind of got the bug of there's so many cool things, the telegraph station, St. Luke's Mission, the homesteaders that lived here, the Salchakit band, and it was just so fascinating. So we did that for a while, and then we just kind of stopped doing that with the kids at school as much and would only once in a while do history. So then when I retired, I decided that that was something that I wanted to pursue more because it had always been in the back of my mind that it was really important to start pulling things together and to document the history. And so about the year after I retired, I talked around the community, Paula Fry and Pat Vroman, and there was all these different people in the community that were also interested in the history. So we formed the Salcha Historical Society and the museum, and it's kind of a work in progress. We've been doing interviews, we're gathering historical information, we're doing research, and I've just had an opportunity to meet really wonderful people who have just wonderful knowledge about people that have used to live here, or they'll share their family stories. Debbie Muchler has shared with us her family history. They came over the Chilkoot in 1898, and then by way of Iditarod and Fairbanks, and then out to Salcha. So just the stories that people have are just amazing, and I love to listen to how they came to Salcha, or whether if they grew up in Salcha, what life was like. We're still a young enough state that there's a lot of people who came here, like in the 20s and the 40s, that are still around, and so we have a chance to really preserve that history, where in a lot of places, they don't have that opportunity because it was hundreds of years ago when their communities were formed. So I think we're in a unique situation where we can document, we can gather, we can talk to people who lived here when the families who lived here were few and far between. So I think that's exciting.